I hadn't been back to Surrey in years. After Mum passed, I drifted from the family. Partly by choice, partly because I felt like an outsider. So when I received a thick ivory envelope marked Harrington Family Reunion, my first instinct was to bin it. But then Alfie, my 7-year-old, snatched it from my hands. "Let's go, Mummy," he said with that bright-eyed look that made it hard to say no. "I want to meet your family." It wasn't that simple. My family, especially my cousins, never missed a chance to remind me I wasn't quite one of them. I was the daughter of the black sheep, the one who left the family business behind to chase his dream of opening a bookshop in Bristol. When it failed and he died in debt, we became a cautionary tale. Still, something tugged at me. Maybe it was Alfie's excitement. Maybe it was the way he looked so much like Dad when he smiled. Whatever it was, I said yes. We arrived at the Harrington estate the following Saturday. A sprawling manor with ivy-covered walls and a driveway that crunched beneath our feet. Alfie clung to my hand, his trainers barely keeping up with my anxious steps. "Is this where you grew up?" he asked, gazing up at the grand house. "Sort of," I replied. "I spent a few summers here. Before everything changed." Inside, the house buzzed with chatter and clinking glasses. The reunion was in full swing. I spotted Uncle Gerald by the fireplace, his silver hair immaculately combed back. Beside him was my cousin Olivia, dressed in something that looked like it belonged in Tatler. She clocked me the moment I walked in. "Lydia," she said, voice smooth as ever. "You came. And you brought a +1. I nodded. "This is Alfie. My son." Her eyes flickered to him, then back to me. "How charming." Uncle Gerald offered a handshake but didn't mask his surprise. "We didn't expect you. Thought you were still in Bristol, or was it Brighton now?" "Bristol," I said quietly, tightening my grip on Alfie's hand. Someone laughed across the room. Then the whispers began. I could feel the judgment like static in the air. The Harringtons never said things outright. They were too polite for that. But their eyes spoke volumes. Alfie didn't seem to notice. He was too busy staring at the antique chessboard in the corner. I bent down to his level. "Do you want to look around?" I asked. He nodded eagerly, and I gave him a gentle push. "Go on. But stay where I can see you." As he wandered off, I steeled myself for the next round of awkward conversation. What I didn't know was that Alfie had already begun to notice more than I thought. And he was quietly planning something that would turn this entire reunion upside down. The room felt colder somehow, despite the crackling fire. Cousins and aunts exchanged glances that lasted a little too long, their smiles too tight to be genuine. I kept my eyes on Alfie, who was now crouched by the chessboard, his small fingers tracing the carved pieces as if memorizing them. Olivia approached me, her voice sugar-coated but sharp underneath. "So, Lydia, how is life in Bristol? Still running that quaint little bookshop of yours?" I smiled politely. "No, I closed it last year. Alfie and I moved here for a fresh start." She raised an eyebrow. "A fresh start? How charming. Must be quite the change from the bustling city to this quiet estate." I bit back the urge to tell her I didn't come here for the estate or the family. I came for Alfie, to give him a chance at knowing where he came from, even if it meant enduring their thinly veiled contempt. Uncle Gerald reappeared with a glass of whiskey. "You must be tired, Lydia. It's been a long journey." I nodded. "Yes, but worth it." Then the whispers grew louder, drifting through the room like an invisible fog. "Remember when Dad left that mess behind? Always the black sheep, isn't she? Wonder how long this will last." I heard it all. The words stung, but I held my ground. "For Alfie." Suddenly, Alfie looked up from the chessboard. His eyes met mine, and I saw a spark there. Something I hadn't seen before. A quiet defiance that seemed too big for a 7-year-old. He stood and marched straight into the middle of the room, clutching a small piece of paper in his hand. "I have something to say," he announced, his voice clear and strong. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to my little boy, who stood taller than anyone expected. And just like that, the evening changed. Alfie cleared his throat and unfolded the paper in his small hands. The room stayed utterly silent, the tension thick enough to cut through. "I know you think I'm just a kid," Alfie began, his voice steady. "But I have something important." Something Dad wanted everyone to know. Olivia's smile faltered, and murmurs rippled around the room. Uncle Gerald leaned forward, curious despite himself. Alfie took a deep breath. Dad recorded a message for me before he died. He said I should have it when I'm ready. He held up the paper, a transcription of the message. I recognized Dad's handwriting, shaky but unmistakable. I felt my throat tighten. Memories of Dad flooded back, his laughter, the late-night talks, the promises he made to me and Alfie. Dad said he was sorry for not being there. He wanted me to know he loved me and that family isn't just about blood, it's about who stands by you. A silence heavier than before settled. The relatives glanced at each other, unsure how to respond. Then, Alfie's eyes locked on mine again, full of hope and courage. In that moment, I realized this visit might not be the bitter confrontation I feared. It might be the start of something new. The days after the reading were a blur of whispered conversations and stolen glances. I found myself drawn back to the old house in Cranford, its worn walls hiding stories I was only beginning to understand. One afternoon, while exploring the attic, I stumbled across a dusty leather box tucked away in a corner. Inside were letters, photographs, and a faded journal belonging to my father. As I leafed through the fragile pages, a pattern emerged, one of hidden debts, secret meetings, and a desperate attempt to protect someone. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that Dad's life was more complicated than anyone admitted. And those complications might explain why he left so much unsaid. Meanwhile, Alfie grew closer to some of the cousins I barely knew, breaking down barriers that had stood for years. Even Uncle Gerald seemed less hostile, though his eyes still held cautious suspicion. One evening as the sun dipped low, I found a letter addressed to me, written in Dad's careful script. It ended with a warning: trust no one completely. My heart pounded. What else had been hidden from me? And who could I really count on now? The letter weighed heavily in my pocket as I wandered through the garden of the Cranford estate. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows over the rose bushes and gravel paths, but all I could think about was the warning from my father. Trust no one completely. Memories of family gatherings flickered in my mind, the forced smiles, the whispered jabs, the subtle power plays hidden beneath polite conversation. Who among them was hiding what? I decided I needed answers, and that meant digging deeper than I ever had before. The journal hinted at meetings in a town nearby, Bath, a place I had only visited briefly as a child. I made a plan to return there, to follow the trail my father had left behind. Before I left, Alfie pulled me aside. His usual cheerful grin was replaced by something serious. "Mom, promise me you'll be careful. I don't want anything to happen to you." His words tightened something inside me. I nodded, hiding the fear that churned in my stomach. I wasn't just chasing a story anymore. I was chasing the truth. Bath greeted me with its familiar mix of history and mystery. I visited the local archives, sifting through old newspapers, property records, and court documents. Slowly, a web began to form. My father had been involved in more than just business. There were connections to a scandal that had rocked the town decades ago. One name kept appearing: Margaret Lawson. A woman no one in the family had ever mentioned. She was connected to the estate, to my father's past, and, strangely, to my own birth certificate. That night, I returned to my hotel room, heart pounding. I had to find her. Whoever Margaret Lawson was, she held the key to everything. But the deeper I dug, the more I felt eyes watching me. Strange calls came in at odd hours, and a car seemed to follow me through the narrow streets. The warning from Dad echoed in my mind louder than ever. I wasn't just uncovering secrets. I was stirring up ghosts best left alone. The next morning, I arranged to meet an elderly historian named Mr. Whitaker, someone recommended by the archives. His small office was filled with dusty books and photographs, the scent of old paper heavy in the air. He greeted me warmly, but his eyes held a cautious spark. "You're asking about Margaret Lawson, are you?" "Not many do." I nodded. "She's connected to my family. I believe she might hold answers about my father." Mr. Whitaker shuffled through a pile of yellowed papers and pulled out a faded photograph. Margaret was a remarkable woman. She ran the estate's affairs in the 1950s, a time when women rarely held such power. I stared at the photo of a stern, yet graceful woman in a tailored suit. Something about her gaze felt familiar, almost haunting. Why did no one ever mention her? I asked. He sighed. There was a scandal. Margaret was accused of manipulating the family business to protect someone. She disappeared from public life shortly after. My heart skipped. Protect someone? Who? Mr. Whitaker hesitated, then said, a child. An illegitimate heir, hidden from the family to avoid ruin. The room spun. Could this secret child be me? Or someone else tied to my bloodline? Determined, I dug deeper into the archives late into the night, cross-referencing names and dates. Slowly, a hidden lineage emerged, tangled with lies and sacrifices made decades ago. At the hotel, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Stop digging, or you'll regret it. Fear gnawed at me, but so did resolve. I couldn't walk away now. Not when the truth was so close. The next day, I found a small village church mentioned in the journal. Inside, I discovered a weathered memorial plaque. Among the names, one caught my eye. Margaret Lawson. Beneath it, carved faintly, were initials matching a secret I was beginning to understand. The past was alive. And it was watching me. The air in the village was thick with whispers as I left the church. I felt eyes on me, shadows lurking just beyond sight. The warning message lingered in my mind, but I pressed on, driven by a need I couldn't deny. That evening, I met with Sarah, the local librarian, a woman with sharp eyes and a memory for details. The Lawson family was respected, but secrets festered beneath the surface, she told me. Margaret's disappearance left a void no one dared to speak about. She handed me a brittle diary, its cover worn and pages yellowed. This belonged to Margaret. It might hold what you seek. Back in my room, I opened the diary, the handwriting elegant but hurried. Margaret's words painted a picture of loyalty, betrayal, and a desperate fight to protect her family's legacy. One entry stood out. If only the truth were free, I would bear the burden no longer. Suddenly, a noise at the door startled me. I locked it quickly. The threats were real, and now they were close. The diary revealed more than I expected. Names, dates, and cryptic references to a hidden heirloom said to unlock the family's true history. Determined, I planned to visit the old Lawson estate at dawn, hoping to uncover the heirloom before whoever was trying to stop me could act. The night was restless. Outside, the wind whispered secrets older than the village itself. Dawn broke over the rolling hills as I approached the Lawson estate, its silhouette looming against the pale morning sky. The manor had seen better days. Ivy crept up its stone walls and windows stared like hollow eyes. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and memories. I moved carefully through the grand hallway, my footsteps echoing. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a warning. In the library, beneath a faded portrait of Margaret's ancestors, I found a hidden compartment. Inside lay an ornate wooden box, carved with intricate patterns and the Lawson family crest. My hands trembled as I opened it, revealing a collection of old letters, photographs, and a small key. Reading the letters, I pieced together a story of love and sacrifice, of Margaret's attempt to shield her family from a scandal that could have torn them apart. The key, I soon realized, was meant for a locked drawer in the estate study. Heart pounding, I rushed there. Inside the drawer was a bundle of documents, wills, property deeds, and a final letter from Margaret herself. She confessed to protecting an illegitimate child, a secret heir who had the right to the family fortune. At that moment, footsteps sounded behind me. I turned to see Robert, his face shadowed with anger and desperation. "You should have left this alone," he said quietly. But I knew the truth had to be told. Whatever his motives, this secret could no longer be buried. As I held the letter, I felt the weight of the past lifting. The shadows were fading, but the path ahead was uncertain. The story was far from over. Weeks had passed since the truth came to light. The Lawson estate, once shrouded in silence and shadows, now felt alive with possibility. I stood in the garden where Margaret had spent so many quiet afternoons, watching the sun filter through the ancient oaks. The revelations had shaken our family to its core, but they had also healed old wounds. Robert had disappeared after that tense confrontation, leaving behind unanswered questions. Yet, with the secret heir identified and rightful claims acknowledged, a new chapter was beginning. I found myself no longer just an outsider looking in, but a guardian of a legacy that was both fragile and strong. There was still much to be done, restoring the estate, rebuilding trust, and forging a future from the fragments of the past. As the evening light softened, I felt a quiet resolve. The shadows may always linger, but now I held the light. And with it, hope.